I think we're pretty much ready to go. Thank you to everyone for tuning in for what is the first of our Event Insight series of webinars. Please let me know in the chat if the sound is working. Just turning the sound down on a second device there. So let me know in the chat just to make sure that the sound and everything is working. Like I said, thank you for joining us. We've had an amazing response to these webinars, and this morning is the first one. So we're delighted to have Paul Macarthur from SGC doing today's session on security services, but from the buyer's perspective. So it's interesting. We've been talking to Paul about this, and I know a lot of us have fairly strong feelings about security for our events and stuff, and what's involved in the decision-making process and all that. So Paul has sound is good. Thank you, folks. So Paul has a great insight into how things work specifically in the UK. I know a lot of you are tuning in from the UK. I think a lot of his advice applies no matter where you are in the world trying to sort your security. So don't get too caught up in it just being UK related, because it's not. We all run into the same issues. You're welcome, Walter. Thanks for tuning in. So one of the first things we wanted to say is thank you to Actavo Events. Paul Griffin is our main contact, and they're supporting us with these webinars. They're always great supporters of stuff we do and stuff for the industry. So they've come on board and are helping us with what we hope is some really good tech. We didn't want to get caught out like some others are getting with like limits on room numbers and stuff like that. So we've gone fairly high with our room number limits just to make sure no one misses out. We'd be quite annoyed if even one person wasn't able to get in to a room we had a webinar on in. So Actavo are helping us out on that front, which is good. Paul's presentation will be available afterwards. We may put it up just to download in here, or we'll definitely send it to you. So if you're like me, you'll probably still take notes during the session, because I like to write my own notes and read my own notes. That's fine. But you will be sent on the presentation. Some of the functionality inside in Webinar Jam we're going to be using today, and just to see, does it work? So forgive us if a few things don't work. We've tested everything a lot. Everything works fine. And one of the reasons we went with this software for the webinars was that some of the functionality is quite good. So one of the first things I want to do is just put a really quick poll live. I want to see where everyone's tuning in from. I've already gotten some text this morning given out that I couldn't list every single country in this poll. We've based it pretty much on where we think the back end of the system is telling us people are registered from. So I'm going to put a poll live now. You should see it pop up, and just let us know where you are in the world. It's always interesting for us to know where people are tuned in from. So just let us know. Other than that, we've got a couple of things will be happening throughout the session. Paul's going to go through his session. We do have a Q&A scheduled for afterwards. Paul is quite comfortable if anything comes up in the middle, or if someone wants to ask something and we need to take a bit of a tangent because it suits the people tuned in, that's cool. So use the chat function. We have the ability to mark things you pop in the chat function as questions. Connor and I and Martin on our team will be trying to track all that. So by the time we get to the Q&A, we'll have a stock of questions that have come in. But if anything makes sense to kind of divert to within the session itself, Paul is quite comfortable to do that. So feel free to use the chat function and throw in any questions. With the idea, and we're lucky to have Paul on the first one because he firmly believes this too. The idea here is to give people tuned in whatever you value. So Paul has a presentation, other presenters on the series will have presentations, but the core point of all this is to give you value. So if someone has a burning question and you pop it in the chat and a load of other people start going, yeah, actually, that's really important. Can we talk about that? We're going to try and divert to that kind of stuff just to make sure you're getting value. So that's the theory. Don't be afraid to get involved. Ask the questions. We won't ignore anything. If we have to get to it afterwards and try and get you an answer, we will. If we have to send a list of questions on to Paul afterwards, we will. We will make sure to try and give you the value that you're looking for out of the session. So a lot from the UK and Ireland, Australia and New Zealand represented well there too, which we suspected all right, which is good. Raymond, thanks for that. Raymond, appreciate that message. So if everyone's ready, I think we're going to hand over to Paul and we're going to let him go ahead with the session. And like I said, continue to use that chat function. Let us know what you want to know. Ask questions as we go along. Like I said, it's focused on the UK regulatory situation, but as regards advice around what you should consider when you're choosing your event security suppliers, I think that's probably going to stand to us no matter what corner of the world we're in. So Paul, if you want to take it away and get going, and I'll talk to you all in a while.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's well. Thank you very much to Mark and the Insights team, making me your first guinea pig in a number of presentations. If the system does crash, it's nothing to do with me. I'm going to take all responsibility away from me. But no, we've spent a good few hours going through this, and hopefully today I would like to make this interactive with you all. I don't want it to be sort of death by PowerPoint. So as Mark mentioned, please feel free to stop and ask Mark to ask me a question, and we will go from there. So a little bit about myself. I've been in the industry since 1989. I originally worked for probably the largest security company in the UK and Northern Ireland, which was Sabrewatch back in the day. I subsequently then moved to the fashion house Giorgio Armani, where I was the loss prevention manager for their UK stores in London, Bond Street, Covent Garden, Brompton Road and Harrods. So I really cut my teeth in terms of retail loss prevention and protection in terms of high net worth individuals coming in and fashion shoots. The fashion house then purchased a fashion label called Donna Karan. So I then went to work for Donna Karan under the same fashion arm at Giorgio Armani. From there, I subsequently went to work for British Home Stores as a loss prevention manager, carrying out high-end investigation, fraud, test purchasing work for a number of stores, including their high street store in Oxford Street in London. I was then hunted by quite a large security company and the corporation that owned the football club, the chauffeuring business and the man guarding arm. Spent a few years working there, making the owner quite a lot of money, and the company grew, and it was then subsequently broke off and sold off. And then my wife convinced me to start and go on my own. So the rest is history, as they probably will say. I own a training company. I own a security business. I also own another business for responsible gambling within the gambling retail sector that I support gambling retail betting industries in terms of best practice and compliance and technology. I'm the owner of SGC Security Services, and we are a UK man guarding company and crowd safety provider. We have about 600 full-time staff, which I'm happy to say we haven't furloughed a single member of staff currently in the UK. Business plan is week by week currently at the moment, so I know we're all in the same boat in terms of where we currently are in the situation. I notice I've got a few clients that have joined on this webinar today, so I'll be on my best behaviour. No doubt I'll probably get some questions of some of the clients that have popped up and come this morning. So again, welcome to you also. So my background is security, close protection, crowd safety. I am also recently been appointed by the SIA, as in the UK, which is the regulator, as the Southeast Regional Lead for all ACS approved contractors and non-approved contractors within the south of England. I was appointed in March of this year, and I hosted my first Southeast Regional webinar last Friday, which is a really good success. And it's a conduit really for business owners within the security sector to have a link directly into the Home Office, into the SIA, where we can put best practice recommendations forwards, concerns within the industry that business owners have in terms of security and regulations. So I was quite honoured to take up that post. I hold a safety officer certificate. I'm a qualified teacher trainer as well. I hold a number of various different qualifications throughout the security industry and the crowd sector. I've worked internationally in the UAE, Australia, Africa, supporting various different events, festivals, music events, tour managing, so on and so forth. So what can I offer? I can help deliver a plan and manage all contract security and crowd safety, introduce key initiative and technology related to event security on cost saving, frontline operation and back office administration, can support being a senior security liaison to your stakeholders in any country, attend client meetings and briefings and project manage on a local and national basis if required. The aim of this today is during the last 8 weeks, I've been in lockdown, with business has been continued, and there's been a number of projects I wanted to get off the ground and some white papers. And one of the white papers and the projects I wanted to get off the ground is buying the right security. I've been on both sides of the fence. I've brought security when I was working various in-house. And also I sell my words and I sell my needs to clients, whether it'll be stadium, festival, NHS, government contracts. And I think everything nowadays is procurement led. And by the end of this presentation, hopefully you have a takeaway of how and sort of what process in terms of due diligence you should be looking into when you're actually making the decision for your festival or event or your contracts, in terms of picking the right provider. You're not really just picking it based on price. And I know it's all right for me to say that in the current climate, but it really does have a knock-on effect. And hopefully throughout this presentation, it will give you an understanding and the reasons why. Also to look at raising the standards within the industry that we all work in, whether that would be the private security sector and the crowd safety sector also. So are you planning an event? As Mark said, I've taken a lot of data and information from the UK here. So take this information and look at your in-country regulator in terms of licensing and how your licensing works and how the appointments of security companies will work. So currently in the UK, the event sector is worth 42.3 billion, and not all events will require professional security. Some of these security staff will require licenses, and they are issued by the UK regulator, which is the Security Industry Authority. In Dublin, you've got the Private Security Authority, which were formed in 2004. So it's really a sort of a mirror image of what the UK set up. So the Security Industry Authority is the organisation responsible for regulating the private security industry. They're an independent body reporting to the Home Secretary under the terms of the Private Security Act 2001, which was approved by Parliament. They have two main duties. One is the compulsory licensing of an individual security officer, and the other is to manage the voluntary approved contractors scheme, where a number of measures have to be assessed and criteria before a security company can become approved with the approved contractor scheme. So the price is right. Whilst it might be appealing to buy cut price security, the possible consequence of doing so can be considerable. Low quality security provision can raise the risk to public and being able to deal appropriately with incidents. Screening and vetting checks may be inadequate. Customer service may be poor. Ultimately, your business brand and your good names could be damaged by having poor security on site. Past reports in the media show that often the buyer makes the headlines, not the security contractor. A well-informed buyer of security can reduce the likelihood of occurring by conducting a strong tender process and due diligence checks and detailed event pre-planning, which we're going to come on to further. So do you buy security? To give you an idea, the importance of an SIA approved contractor, suppliers and points. The SIA is regulated, as I mentioned, and it falls under the Ministry of Justice along with the police and prison service. The SIA set the requirements for entry into the industry for individuals and standards of training and background vetting that an individual needs to be passed. And that's regulated, as I mentioned earlier, under the Private Security Act Currently in the UK, the SIA has 400,000 licensed security officers registered, making more than double than the police and prison service put together. Okay, so that's quite a big number, and that is increasing month by month in terms of the security industry is really becoming a blue light provider to support the police sector and also prisons and healthcare. The SIA does not license or regulate security companies by default. Those companies who believe that they operate in a fit and proper organisation can volunteer and have an annual audit and apply for their ACS. It is a very costly and timely consuming process to go through. I've been an ACS provider since day one. Each couple of years they change the scoring matrix to make it more and more difficult to renew and to continue with your ACS accreditation. It is voluntary. A couple of years ago they were trying to look into business regulation to make security companies more regulated and be on an approval list. So there's 400,000 licensed officers. Between 5,000 and 10,000 security companies are in the UK. Currently, there is no data. Nobody knows actually how many security companies they are. So in the past 8 weeks, some of you may be familiar with the London Olympics. There was a huge surge of pop-up security companies operating overnight on a quick rich get scheme campaign. During COVID, we have seen it happen again. You can go and register a company for £12, have an SIA badge, pop up, great. You're trading, you're supplying your services out to a number of different security companies and customers. So of them 10,000 or so companies, there are only 860 ACS accredited companies. That's less than 10% of the industry total. So that's 10% of companies can prove that they are fit for purpose and with the right processes and the right procedures, training and insurances in line to deliver services for you as a customer. So your security staff, your premises and equipment, okay, are a serious commitment. Investing time in a procurement process and undertaking some basic checks can recap and reward you in buying security. The ACS provides a recognition hallmark within the private security sector, and it's tested against 80 performance indicators throughout and 9 essential criteria, helping you make your decision based on best value and quality. So when you choose a security supplier who is an industry authority contractor, you have some reassurance that you're working with a very, very good provider and they tick all the boxes throughout. So buying cut price security may be appealing. Your brand will be at risk if the security supplier provides a very low hourly rate for the provision of security. This could be an indication of illegal requirements that are being breached, and we'll come on to a little template myself and my team have put together to give you some understanding. So that could be a massive impact in terms of your insurance and further consequences. The SIA are working very, very closely with other government agencies for HMRC, and they are prosecuting companies and business owners of security businesses as we speak. A good quality security provision reduces the danger of violent incidences, theft, reduction and protection of staff and assets overall. Lowering the quality provision can raise the risk of harm to your staff and the public, as well as potentially damaging your brand. A responsible buyer can also play a role and recognise that high quality security provided by people of all backgrounds, age, abilities and genders. And if you enter into a contractual agreement with a supplier, the lowest hourly rate wins. The contract provision is set to fail within weeks. And I say this being in business for over 20 odd years. We've lost business, we've lost tenders. If I take last year's trading, we tendered for around about £4 million worth of work. We didn't win any of it due to the price that we went in Other companies won it. We were then subsequently came second on the tender process. And then the client's then calling us back 3 months later on saying, look, you know, we've made a mistake here. Can you come in based on your proposal? We're going to go with you. So a lot of that is happening now, and it's all geared up around the, you know, the race to the bottom, really, in terms of the security industry, and buying a price instead of buying a service and a brand, and buying the owner of the business that really sort of, you know, leads into your organization and your ethos as well. And there's a number of points that I'm going to highlight now in terms of sort of due diligence that you can look into. So the British Standard 7499 Code of Practice for Static Guarding and Mobile Patrol Service, that's available, which an ACS company has to work towards and also has to work by. We've got the 7858 Code of Practice of Screening and Vetting of personnel employed within a security environment. If they deliver key holding services, and it's the BS 79848. Again, very detailed in what companies have to operate. Part of your due diligence checks are the directors, managers, and supervisors. Are they frontline security operatives correctly licensed? Do they hold a badge? It is a criminal offence for a director of a company in the UK not to hold a frontline SIA badge. They cannot operate. They do, and they are being caught out as we speak. Does the chosen supplier have a minimum of 2 years audited accounts? Unless it's a new business. If it's a new business, you are taking a huge gamble to award a contract to a festival, a cycle race, a greenfield event. It may look attractive. They may have a great website. They may come through as a recommendation through another partner or a provider, but it's a huge risk in terms of due diligence. You have to ensure that the pay-as-you-earn scheme and VAT registration numbers and pension are set up and operating. As a buyer under HMRC regulations, you have a duty of care to check your suppliers. If a supplier you engaged with a security company and they subsequently went down after one of your festivals and you paid them, HMRC in the UK can come back to you as the buyer to carry out full due diligence in what due diligence checks did you carry out at the time. If you don't satisfy HMRC, HMRC have a recourse to come to you for outstanding PAYE and VAT, which is really important, and they are stepping it up in the UK currently. Is a supplier up to date with all statutory payments to the Crown? So are they behind on VAT payments? Are they behind in terms of their PAYE payments? It's another important factor. If they are trading insolvent. Okay, so they're just going to go for a quick fix to get some money out of you for an event and then subsequently close out. Are there insurances in place? For example, if you're running a festival and you're running a cash operation between your bars and a cash hub, does the security supplier have appropriate insurances for cash in transit on site? If they don't have that and they've told you in the tender that they can supply it, you shouldn't be awarding any contracts or anybody's insurances that do not stack up to your requirements and what you need. Also, have they produced copies and policies of their ISO 9001, safeguarding and health and safety? And have you challenged and tested the market in terms of the documentations that they are supplying you? Further due diligence checks, okay, a really, really important one. Although we're currently in lockdown, tendering and procurement is still taking place. We've been invited this morning to tender for a couple of pieces of work. One of the main criteria to look at when looking for a supplier, are they based in an office? It's no good dealing with the owner off of a mobile phone. If you can't attend their offices, we're now living in an age where it's all Zoom and team meetings. Arrange a meeting, arrange a virtual Zoom or Skype meeting of their office to see their control room, to see their staff in operation, that they have a HR department, they have an accounts department, they have an operations team in place. Does a company website check out independently? Check all their associated links and testimonials. We've all got black books, and ring up some of your colleagues and people in the industry and test the market and see if they've used that provider previously. Another important point is, does the security supplier have appropriate staff and employment conditions in place? Do they issue their staff contracts and employment? That's a huge tick box for an employer to ensure that their staff are safe. They've got a company handbook. They've got their proper working terms and conditions. And does the supplier have a robust HR and vetting and recruitment team? Ensure that the national living wage, minimum wages, and holiday pay and statutory sick pay and pensions are being adhered to. Ask these questions of these suppliers. If you drill down as much as you can and you get the due diligence in place, it's going to help you so much in the long run. Have you been clear in the contract? So if you've issued a contract to a provider about the use of subcontracting and labour provision, this is a massive taboo subject currently in the UK. There is so much subcontracting taking place. It is diluting the market. A service provider will bid for a piece of work. They will look at it and go, well, do you know what? I can make an extra sort of 10, 15% subbing it out to somebody else. Just send their management team down on site and reap the benefits and reap the rewards. And then what happens at a later date is the subcontractor doesn't get paid. The subcontractor then contacts you to say that I've worked for ABC company, I haven't been paid, and then you get brought into a big sort of turmoil of liability and everything else. So really drill down in terms of who you're going to appoint, whether they're going to be subcontracting out any elements of the contract in the tender. Also, ongoing audits and KPIs, key performance indications. So I've put together a little document. Mark, I don't know if you can share that up to the guys for me. So there's a couple of little downloads and takeaways I've done. It's a KPI document. It's linked together on an Excel spreadsheet. You can change the document how you see fit, but you can use this in terms of meeting with your supplier, monthly meetings, and scoring them in terms of KPI deliveries and for training, attendance, staff punctuality. It's a good document to use. You can use it to your advantage if you want to get out of a contract with a provider that you wasn't happy with, or you can use a document as a working tool with the provider, because good feedback also supports the relationship. There'll be out-of-hours spot checks to be done by the security officers on site. So again, ask the provider what sort of out-of-hours checks are being done. If you're in a loading phase on a greenfield site and you've requested overnight security, what is their lone worker policies? What supervisor is coming down to check on the staff overnight? You've got stages going in, you've got generators going in, you've got marquees going in, and it's no good just having an officer on site where they're falling asleep in the winter or not turning up. So again, get the provider to ensure you and show you and demonstrate what sort of out-of-hour checks are being done. The security operatives. So when you're engaged with a supplier, talk to the security operatives, no matter if they're a steward or if they're a regional manager. Engage with them and find out who do they work for. I've seen it so many times where you've got some great staff on site on your contract, and then you get to start talking to them, and how long you've been with ABC company? Oh no, I don't work for them. We just got brought in, last week because they were short. So the liability then is shifting in terms of something did go wrong. Your contract is engaged with company A, but company A has subbed out their contractual engagement and requirements to somebody else. So, if an incident went to court, where would the liability fall on? You, because you haven't carried out your due diligence checks correctly. Also company A by subbing out without informing you. Also as well, in terms of invoicing and bank accounts. So when you've done your company's house checks, if you're getting invoiced for a job or however the payment process works, does the invoice match up to the contracts and to the contract company? Far too much of that takes place within the UK. So they will go in and tender under Company A, and in Company B will then send you an invoice, which means that they're not paying any statutory monies to the Crown. So again, you will have a recourse coming back onto you if they were investigated or went into liquidation. So again, please check all that. Training records and CPD, that is a huge must now within our industry. It's far too easy, you know, just to put somebody on site without any training or any continual professional development by the company. At the moment, we're waiting for the SGSA to update the Green Guide. They've done a recent consultation in terms of a number of aspects within the Green Guide, and I'm a big fan of the training. We've included the sort of level 2 MVQ spectator safety, the level 3s and the level 4s, and we've just done a bit of a giveaway. And again, Mark, if you don't mind pushing it up for me, there's an opportunity for your staff to carry out their MVQ level 2 via our e-learning portal. And we've done it at a little bit of a discounted rate for everybody. If you want to take advantage of it, great. If not, drop me a line if you've got some numbers you want to talk to me about. Once we're out of lockdown, we will come to your site and we'll carry out the simulated and live assessments. But your staff members in the meantime can work online to carry out their MVQ level 2s. Also, CPD records. So when you meet your provider, have a look at their training stats. You know, have a look at their certifications. What is their training plans for their staff? If you've appointed a provider and your festival's in 3 months' time, what is that provider doing up until that 3 months to ensure that continual training is taking place for their staff? So always challenge the training recognition of each company. Ask to see samples of staff uniform that a security provider is representing. You may want your brand on that, or you may not want your brand. So again, ask in advance. I want to see, you know, I want to see the uniform that you're providing. On event day, supplier will turn up. Everyone's in standard black and whites, walking around in black coats. How do you know if, you know, that's a response team? How do you know if that's a steward? How do you know if that's a crowd spotter? Oh, where's my pit team? Oh, my pit team's up there, but they've all got black jackets on, so their high vises don't stand out, so your control room operators can't see correctly. So what it's doing is adding added pressure to your safety team on the day. And if anything did go wrong, you know, why didn't you prevent it? Why didn't you stop it happening beforehand? Technology is very important. I invest very heavily in terms of technology to support my clients, my staff, and my management. So again, look at some of the innovation that the appointed company that you're going to look at use. It could fit into some of your events also going forward. So I've put together. I'll stop there. Is there any questions, Mark? Anybody want to ask me anything so far? Is everyone still awake?
Yeah, everyone's still awake. There's a lot of chat going on in the chat, actually. Can you just clarify? There's a query as to whether a director of a security company in the UK requires, so whether the SIA, whether they have to have a frontline SIA license. It seems to, the SIA website seems to say one thing, but people have experienced it slightly differently. So does a director have to have a frontline license, or is that only if they are personally providing some on-the-ground security services?
A director has to hold a frontline license. They have to hold a frontline license to deploy staff.
Okay.
Okay, that is a must. It is a criminal offence if a director of a company does not hold a frontline license. They don't have to work on site, but what they are doing, they are actually physically deploying staff through their mechanism within their business. So they must hold a frontline license.
Okay, that's interesting because, yeah, the conversation, you'll be able to have a look at it afterwards, and we might be able to get it clarified for people. But some people seem to think from actually reading the SIA website that it says one thing, others think it says another. It's similar in Ireland, actually. I was just having a discussion on the chat here with an Irish person in the room. The PSA is very clear on some stuff, and other things then seem to be open to interpretation to suit, and that's where things get a bit hairy, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree. So a non-frontline license is really for administration staff. So say you have a control room, in a security company, your controllers are directing and deploying staff. So if I put a manager on site at a festival, my manager must hold a frontline license. Although they're working for you, let's say they're working for you, Mark, and you're a festival organizer, and I send one of my managers to site and the dot plan says X, Y, and Z, and then they make some changes. My manager would then physically deploy the staff based on that dot plan. So they are coming under their control. So they would have to have a frontline license. So at the top of a tree, an owner of the company is saying to its management team and saying to its staff, okay, fine, these are our clients, these are our staff, we have to deploy. There is a non-frontline license where, I don't know, for example, somebody in HR might have a non-frontline license. Or somebody even in operations where they work back of house but don't physically go and work on site. But yes, they do have to have a frontline license.
Okay, super. Thank you for that. I think that looks like a conversation that might go on in the chat and we may end up talking about afterwards. I might throw in, there's one more question that came in along the way that might be worth just dealing with now. Paul, as you know, in football, local authorities require a level 2 NVQ in spectator safety. However, most suppliers can provide SIA qualified staff rather than the level 2 NVQ. The former is easier to obtain by attending a short course than paying for the badge. The latter, which attracts a lower wage, takes far longer and is more in-depth. What is your view on that one?
I bet that's from Dave Parker.
It is actually from Dave Parker, would you believe?
I see Dave pop up. Sorry, just run that through me again, Mark.
So again, I suppose it's the requirement. It's the requirement that for football, the local authorities require that level 2 NVQ. Mm-hmm. But what most SIA qualified staff, or what most suppliers can give, are SIA qualified staff. Yeah. So there seems to be the two are a little bit at odds. You basically, I think you'll find more SIA qualified people to do that work than you will people that have the level 2. I think is the point. And there was a question Dave followed up then with just a point about the SIA regulating the badge holders, but that there's no such governance for the level 2, 3, and 4 with the NVQ. Once you get that NVQ, you have it, and that's it, kind of, you know.
So, holding an SIA badge is an entry level to the security industry. As I tell all my staff and my training department, great, you've got your SIA badge. That's your entry level. We go into crowd safety. And I'm a big fan, and I'm pushing this a hell of a lot. And I've participated in the consultation document for the Green Guide as well. The problem that we have at the moment, the end user, unless you're someone like Dave, and no disrespect to anybody else, but I'll use Dave as an example because Dave is an actual client, and you know I agree with a lot of what Dave says. A company will look at somebody and go, right, we need some response team staff. Great. Are they DS badged? Yes. Okay. Why do we need DSs? Because we've got bars, we're selling alcohol. That's a tick box. Fantastic. That equates to the license requirement. If SAG turned up, right, yeah, you got DSs and they're covering the bars, they're covering the concourses, great. The problem that we overlook in our industry at the moment is our stewarding. Now, for me personally, and I say this personally, and this is my own view, stewarding should be a recognised licensed engagement. They should be licensed because they are frontline staff. And it's all well and good giving them an NVQ level 2, but they don't get any conflict management training. They don't get any counter-terrorism training. They don't get any first aid training. So for years and years and years, and I may be talking out of turn and I'll probably lose some clients, but I'm very open. We have used stewarding as a quick fix, cheap alternative to make sure that we have a line of defence there that are customer facing. We have moved on from that. If you look at the Manchester Arena, okay, stewarding now assisted and made a major play and a major part in saving people's lives. You know, I think it was Show Event there. They've done a fantastic job in what they achieved down there. We invest very, very heavily as a business in terms of our stewarding and our training. We make sure that they go on to the ACT counter-terrorism training. We put them through into first aid. We write our own safeguarding training practices, and we have an e-learning portal. So we invest the same time and money into a steward that we would do with somebody with an SIA badge. Somebody with an SIA badge thinks that they've absolutely made it and they don't need to go and do a level 2 or a level 3. we now write into some of our contracts with some of our clients that we will ensure that they enroll or work towards obtaining a level 2. You have some stewards that don't want to become door supervisors, and they actually do a fantastic job, better than what some license holders have. The problem that we have, and Dave will recognise this, and along with probably a lot of others, it's not out there in the market. It's such a taboo subject. Only people in our industry knows what an NVQ level 2 spectator safety qualification is. So like the SIA, where it's a criminal offence if you don't have a badge, it should be made mandatory that stewarding should be a level of a minimum 2 enrolment, and within 3 months from start to finish, that individual should carry out and finish their NVQ level 2. That's my personal opinion. But, you know, the SGSA need to push that further. Safety officers, they need to write that into contracts when they're procuring their own security and crowd safety teams to say, you want this job, you've hit the marker, you've hit the pricing structure well, your quality, your delivery is great, but I'm going to insist within this contract that your stewarding must be enrolled and completed within a period of 3 to 6 months, level 2 NVQs. Then you can start cherry picking after some work, transferring your skill sets of some of your staff up to your level 3s. And that's what we do continually. So yes, to answer Dave's question, I'm a big fan and a big supporter, but we need industry change. We need industry change, and clients also need to drive that down to their security and crowd safety provider.
Yeah, I think it's your opinion, and I appreciate it. The personal one is one that's I know echoed by a lot of our colleagues, a lot of them on here at the minute, that work in the UK and feel similar. I think what we might do, there's one more question that did come in. We may as well deal with that now, and then we'll be able to just catch whatever else comes for the end.
Sure.
Paul, if you need to buy in security to operate across the EMEA region, how can there be guarantees of the consistency of standards for the security provision at those events? Now, I suppose that's maybe if you're buying off a UK company who are ACS standard and all that, but what is the likelihood? How can you be sure that the staff you get when you travel to other countries under that contract will be at that same level, I guess, is the question.
So if you're taking on board, let's say, a UK company, you want them to go and work out in Dubai, it's not going to happen because Dubai is licensed. So you've got to use in-country personnel. So Ministry of Interior out there, and again, many years ago, I've done a lot of work in Dubai for the Crown Prince, who set up his own security company, and I'd done a year's worth of work out there for them to get them up to scratch and to board in terms of delivering security. So they are regulated, and what they did out there, they followed the 2001 Private Security Act. So they really nicked everything that the UK put together and installed the standards within the UAE. And they like the British standards. They like the models that we have in place. Vetting and due diligence out there in terms of their individuals is very, very tight. Probably not as tight as what we do in the UK, but there is a model. And, you know, the SIA model and the 2001 Private Security Act, it works. So to take that model and then to parachute that into in-country elsewhere, you have got a platform of standards that you as a buyer can work off of. You may have to sort of tweak some of the requirements, but if you put together a check sheet and if you put a procurement document together with, you know, the bones on it, formulating from an ACS company and what background checks do they do and financial checks, you have at least got a working tool and a working platform to go off of, and that would be my recommendation.
Okay, super. Thank you for that. I mean, there's a logic to it. I know a lot of places adopt the UK standards and the UK approach. I know a lot of the places internationally where we work, you know, everyone's referring to the Green Guide. When we do these standards, they're often the British ones. So I guess it's hard, but it comes back to doing your due diligence checks on the company, the operator, and asking those questions. I mean, if I was buying in that service, I would literally ask, look, if you're giving me staff in Dubai or if you're giving me staff in Belgium, are they at this level that you're putting on your lovely PowerPoints and presenting to me? You know?
Yeah. So normally as well, Mark, you know, you might have a client in the UK that has operations abroad, and sometimes the client will request that the UK arm of the security business takes its management team out there, then sets up the process. So for what they have in the UK, they will say, okay, we've got an operation in Dubai or Nigeria. I want to take your security management team, go out there and run and use the in-country labour in terms of delivering the sort of the front end spectrum, but they can still work in terms of interviewing the staff, carrying out checks, written English checks, getting the company out there to provide background checks, police checks as well. It's very easy to get in different foreign countries than what it is in the UK. So there is a number of methods that you can use and tools to take anywhere around the world and work with.
Yeah, super. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, I'd say we're good for questions for now. So if you wanna carry on, we can jump back in with more at the end.
No problem. So what I've done, I've just I've put up a little example of cost versus pay. So what we've done here, okay, we'll start from the top. We've got one officer doing 48 hours a week at a pay rate of £10 an hour. Okay, fine. £10 an hour seems the sort of average pay that a security officer with the badge in the UK is currently getting. Below that, you're going into sort of minimum wage. If you look at the likes of Lidl's and Aldi's and Marks and Spencer's, where cashiers are getting sort of anything from £11.50 to £15 an hour, it just still shows you the economy of scale of how people perceive security within the UK. So that will give you a total of a gross weekly wage of sort of £480. We are seeing, including myself, we are inundated every single week with third-party security companies coming to us to say, we can supply you labour at £10 an hour. We are seeing so much of it through COVID of pop-up companies contacting my office to say, I have got X, Y, and Z amount of staff. We can charge you £10 an hour. So what are they paying the individual? What are they paying the staff member? So it looks great. It looks attractive because you can think, well, if I can pay them tens and I'm charging the client at $16.44 an hour, I'm making so we need to get people and we need to get buyers out of the mindset, because what I've done on here now is listed costs that are associated by putting one individual on site on a 48-hour a week, paying them at £10 an hour. So we've got to equate for holiday pay under the holiday entitlement. We've got to look at the relief operatives that's going to come and cover that officer. We've got to look at the training costs. We've got to look at the national insurance costs, SSP, pensions, company insurance, certifications. So there's got to be an element of cost within that charge rate. Any associated uniform, if a contract manager is running the contract as well. So you're looking at total direct costs before a security company makes a single penny profit or a single cent or euro profit at £13.73 an hour. Then you've got all the add-on costs and profit. So an average security and crowd safety company would work on a profit margin between 5% and I'd say top end 8%. Okay, so that will give you an indicative charge rate, which will exclude bank holidays, at $16.44. If a provider came in on a tender and said that they can do it cheaper based on whatever country you're in and look at the statutory payments, national insurance, tax, employers' tax, and they can do it cheaper, there's a quick table and a quick method that you can put together and go, hold up a minute, this is too cheap. So somebody is getting robbed somewhere, and it's normally the member of staff or HMRC that are getting robbed of their tax or their national insurance or their money. Because a company could not operate on supplying staff at £10 an hour unless they're paying cash in hand and running it from a mobile phone. And that is a huge consensus in the UK. And what's happening at the moment, and has been for a number of years, is that procurement departments, and I apologise if there's any procurement specialists on here, they will look at that bottom line as the weighted. So they have the policies, the procedures, the overall tender specification, but they will always drill down to the 199th page on a tender submission by a security company, and look at the price and go, yeah, they're cheap enough. So there's a little table there that you can use going forward if need be. I'm going to skip this. We covered pretty much these ones. So also a procurement cycle. So some of your organisations may not have, or may be looking, once we come out of COVID, to start looking to change your security provider. So there's a little chart I've put together. So you need, first of all, to identify your needs, outline your procurement plan. You put your documents out, whether you put it out on OJEC or a tender portal, or you may go and invite a number of companies in a sort of, I don't know, a 20 to 30 mile radius of your event or your stadium to actually bid on your piece of work. You then select your suppliers that you want to invite. You issue the documents, you go through a tender evaluation. Once you then selected, you look at the contracts and terms and conditions to make sure that you have, everything allocated into them T's and C's. You go through the supply chain management, whether you're looking at warehousing or asset management. So there's a little cycle there as well that you can use to go forward. The problem that we see, especially in, and I don't want to knock too many people and companies within the crowd safety sector, an event will get publicised, artists will get booked, flyers will go up, catering will get booked, trackways will get booked, electricians and so on and so forth. 2 weeks before doors open, you start then going, right, we need to find security. We now need to start finding a crowd safety specialist deployment company. You need to look from day one that you're planning an event, what security company you're going to take on with your journey. For me, I want to be there from day one, before you've even put a map together, because then we can work with you as the buyer in terms of your planning. There's some great specialist people on these forums, and I fully appreciate it. I'll keep to my lane. I would always recommend and provide the best service and the best skills, but to be parachuted into a possible event or a contract a week or 2 weeks before the go live date, it is absolute suicide. You've missed turning up on SAG meetings. You've missed turning up on meetings with catering and your production and everything else. Okay. And then event organisers wonder why the day goes so wrong, because they haven't built that relationship up with their security and crowd safety provider. So if I can offer any advice to any buyers, the minute that you want to go live with a festival or an event and you do already have your chosen provider, take them on that journey with you from start to derig, okay? Then your debrief meetings after. That way you're getting value for money. Any pitfalls, all your due diligence is being carried out along the way. And if there is an issue or a flaw and you're a week before doors opening, you've then got an opportunity to either change your contract or say to the provider, look, I'm not feeling comfortable so far what you're doing here or what you provided. Then you may have scope then to change. But to do it a couple of days outside before doors opening, it's absolutely suicide. And a lot of events and organisers and promoters are still doing that. I hear horror stories, especially in the UK. 2 days before an event, they haven't got a provider. They're ringing up everybody and, can you send me some staff? Can you send me some staff? Staff turn up, they don't know who they're working for. There's no management changes, no doc plans, not been inducted. There's no briefings, there's no uniforms. Okay, so really, you need to focus. Crowd safety and security is a huge part of any project that you put on, okay? Especially the height of terrorism that we're in, safeguarding, crime, pickpockets. You really need to start factoring it in a lot early. So again, the PowerPoints are available at the end. I've put them as a PDF, but you can run through, again, another little flow chart in terms of pricing, fulfillment capabilities, quality of product service, reference checking, credit checks, and then follow a sort of flow chart all the way through. I've covered all that really on that side as well. Engagement, as I mentioned, pre-planning is really important on the pre-planning stage that you bring your provider in from day one and build that working relationship. Now that's the end of my presentation. I've kept it just under the hour for you, Mark. I'm happy now. If I can turn my camera on, so I'm not stage frightened. And if anybody's got any questions, please feel free.
Super, Paul. Thank you very much. That was really good. Like I said, a lot of the theory applies no matter where you're looking for your security staff. So I think it's applicable for us all. There was one of the questions I spotted there. Just let me grab it for you. Do you think? Oh, nice one. Do you think that Martin's Law is going to have a potentially negative effect on stewarding standards, as the demand for them is surely going to outstrip supply?
I think Martin's Law, when it comes in, will have a huge impact on us all in the way that we operate stadiums, events, festivals. And it's such a shame that something like that had to take place before people stood up and went, do you know what, we need to start making some serious changes now to our stewarding, our crowd safety planning. I think what it's going to do, it's going to tighten the industry up even further, which is needed as far as I'm concerned. We need to tighten up our regulations in terms of stewarding more. We are using stewarding more and more on events, and that's for car parking, queue management at shopping centres at the moment, and and convenience stores. And it's a quick fix to put a steward in. Oh, they're not licensed, they're not trained. We'll just give them a steward bib, we'll put them on. But they're frontline, Mark. They are dealing with missing kids. They are dealing with a potential suspect package or a safeguarding issue. But we're not giving the tools. We are not giving them the tools and the training to ensure that they carry out their role successfully. And I do hope, that it changes, and it has to change before something seriously happens within the UK or anywhere really. If you take the Martin's Law and you parachute that into any country, if you look at a country's situation of a disaster or event, take best practice and policy and integrate it. If it works, use it. That's my advice.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you're right. I think too often it's both for the security companies who are investing in or not investing in training their staff and everything, and for those procuring the service. It's a race to the bottom on both sides, which actually serves nobody.
Yeah.
But until, I suppose, collectively on both sides, again, collectively as an industry and as a group of procurement people, until everyone accepts, right, we need to do it differently, and that will raise the standard over time. It's probably not going to change.
I think people are in the mindset, Mark, oh, it's not going to happen at my event. It's not going to happen here. So, why worry? You need to worry about it, because if it's a smaller event and it's easy pregnable and it's easy to hit on a terrorism threat or anything, they are your soft targets. The hardened targets where stadiums now, and if we take Reading, we take Tottenham Hotspur, the airport style security at Tottenham Hotspur and the infrastructure and security. If I was a terrorist looking to hit it, do you know what? I think I'll leave this one because, the stewarding's on the ball. I've got searching, I've got K9, and I get it. They're a £1 billion organisation. They're the best football club in the world, Tottenham Hotspur, so they can afford to put all them processes and procedures in. But even it might be a small greenfield event, you've got to look at target hardening. You've got to look at your exterior of your event, and you've got to look at from a counter-terrorism perspective, a customer safety perspective, and people have got to enjoy themselves and feel safe at the same time. So it is a long road, but I do think now we need to start stepping it up, because we're doing a lot of talking about it, and there's a lot of documents flying around, and should we and shouldn't we, and there's a cost factor involved, but how much can you put on somebody's life?
Yeah, true. I think there's an awful lot to it, but again, it takes that collective resolve to try and go at it and try and change it. And I think the fact is, these things can happen, and unfortunately do happen, which should nearly, you would hope, be enough to bring it home to people that, God, if it can happen in that venue in the next city over. We don't like to say it a lot. But the reality is, when we're target hardening and when we're trying to make our event safer, what we're actually doing, if we have threat actors watching us or looking for a target, we're saying to them, move on to the next guy. Yes. He's not putting in place what we're putting in. He's easier, go that way. I'm sorting us out.
We're pushing it down the road to somebody else's venue, and it's it's a difficult.
There's an interesting one here in from Raymond. Would it be possible for ACS accredited security companies to liaise with the leaders of event insurance companies to create a program of seminars across the UK to educate the leading event organizers on the importance and financial benefit of using the ACS accredited security providers? I suppose, how do you put that across to people that they really need to be looking at that top, I think you said it was 10% that are ACS accredited? How do you drive that home? So even from a procurement perspective, maybe it's getting listed in tenders as a criteria, you know, how that could be a good idea. Again, it's the usual thing of, can you get X and Y to sit and talk and work together, I guess.
I think it's a great question that Raymond's raised. So if I take my insurance and I pay an absolute, you know, we've got 10 million public liability insurance, we have cash in transit insurance, we've got insurance. So my broker and my insurance company, they give us discount because we're ACS approved. So there's a number of insurance companies out there, Sutton Fire Risk, who we're with. They give you discount in terms of your ACS scores, your processes, your procedures, if you've had any wrongful arrests, etc., etc., and they give you discount off of your insurance each year, which is great. I do think the insurance brokers union need to come together. How we put that together, and it could be a question that I bring up on my next SIA seminar in a couple of weeks' time, that I put forward to the SIA, that ACS companies get with an insurance arm to say, okay, fine, you know, these are the pros and the cons, and then pass that also down to event organizers to say, right, you're putting on this event, this festival. Who's your security supplier? Are they ACS? Okay, yes, they're ACS. Documents have been submitted. Audit's been done. There's a discounted amount. I think that's a great question. How we put that together, I'll have to do some full process around it, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and again, Raymond actually followed that up with another addendum to it, which it could work as well in theory. Would be that if the insurance companies actually had it as a clause in the policies. So, yeah. I mean, the bottom line is, in the world we all operate in, if an insurance company dictates something, or if multiple insurance companies start to dictate X, Y, Z, same as cover levels and stuff, we'd all have to toe the line. Often things only develop and change either A, because something bad happens, or B, because insurance companies insist on it. It's a regular conversation we have here, whether it's with clients or at industry forums or whatever, where things that get blamed on health and safety, quite often what's actually driving it is the insurance industry or a change in an insurance stipulation, but this catch-all term for, it's a health and safety thing. Usually it's because there have been claims, and it's not necessarily coming from your safety guy. Your safety guy may think you're doing everything as reasonably well as you can, but if the insurance companies say, you have to change that, we're not covering it anymore, that's actually often where the driver for change comes from.
I think the problem we have, Mark, we all operate we buy people, okay? So the culture that we work in, I know somebody that knows somebody that can provide you security, especially in the event sector. Great. I lose work because people don't like me. I can live with that. I can live with that. You've gone with somebody else cheaper. You might have liked them because they've been using somebody else's job, but I cringe. I look and think, you've gone with somebody else that is cheaper, hasn't got the insurances, hasn't got this in place, cannot give you the support, cannot give you the back end. And you've probably seen it yourself and work that you've bidded on as well. Yeah. Okay. I would rather walk away from a client based on price, because I know if I can't deliver that service, I'm putting my name to it. Okay. Regardless, having a business, I'm putting my name to your event. I want to make sure that your public, your staff, you go home. We're not on the telly. We're not doing casualties. There's not a major incident, and there is a price to pay for that. I've worked 20 odd years in the industry. I've worked hard. I've walked away from customers where they've gone to me, well, Paul, can I bid you down this? Well, no, because what you're doing, you're diluting. It's got to come from somewhere. So that means I'm paying my staff less. They're not going to want to turn up. We go into a free fall, then we can't cover the event. So I think it's this sort of mindset and it's culture and it is cost-driven, Mark. I know that. Okay, yeah. I know that as well. It is a cost-driven market that we're in. We're all hurting. This is going to hurt us for the next 18 months. Events and festivals, we don't know what's going to go on. So next year we may see a huge peak. there could be a huge shortage in the industry of supplying security and crowd safety, where every promoter is going to go, right, we're going to run an event on this weekend, we could be in a massive turmoil, a massive shortage within the industry on equipment, artists, the whole lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, that you're echoing discussions that we're having with a lot of industry colleagues and clients and stuff over here. I think that we would operate quite similarly in the services we offer, in that we'll often look at a tender. Sometimes you'll know probably where it's destined to go. You'll definitely know the prices they want to pay. So one of the first things, and when we do a tender, we put an awful lot of work into a tender. We really do. So we want to make sure it's worthwhile. So the main thing we will pay attention to in a tender is the criteria and that balance, the split between how much is weighted on cost. Because we know, because of the training we do, because of all the upskilling and everything we do and the standard we want our people to be, we know we are 99% of the time not the cheapest option. So we want procurement people who are asking for, if I see something where price is 50% or higher, it's probably not for us. You know what I mean? If it's 30 or 40, and if it's a good project and it's something we're really keen on, then it's probably worth us taking a run on. It's interesting, actually, there's a question came in there from Walter, who's based in the Netherlands, and says, are there actually procurement officers who will look at training and CPD programs for security companies? He says, we're based in the Netherlands. We invest a lot in training and CPD, but none of the organizers we work with ever ask about it. And the auditing authority, who come every year to do the tick the box exercises with them as a company, say that they're not paying much attention to it either. So Walter's wondering. I mean, it's interesting to see this is clearly a global thing, or at least European. It's not just the UK and Ireland.
The best buyers. Please don't take any offence to this. Okay, so we have procurement. Okay, and I'm doing an interview with a leading procurement officer this week on part of my podcasts, and that's to get more of an understanding how procurement works in terms of security. Now, this procurement guy has been in procurement for 30 years. He doesn't know nothing about security. He knows what I do, but he has to go and buy security. So the best people that I sell to are security managers or safety officers that know what they want. They know what the industry is operating to and the cost. And like you say, with procurement, it's a 200-page document that you have to jump through all these hoops, 2 weeks worth of work, bottom line, and the procurement are going, okay, fine, yeah, they've got insurance, and then, okay, they're cheap.
Yeah.
And then all they're doing then is going, we've ticked that box, they pass that down to the security manager or the safety officer, there's your company.
Go use them, yeah. It's interesting, actually. We're a smaller market in Ireland, but I suppose we would work with a lot of different security companies. But being honest, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school here, for certain clients, for certain projects, for certain scales, we nearly know the way their tender will look and who it will be geared towards getting. Do you know that kind of way? Because for some clients have the leeway to do, even within the tender process, to try and gear something towards getting competent contractors so that it's not them. We've dealt with procurement people who say their own hands are tied by the processes they have to use. So as a person, they know that the system means they get less satisfactory suppliers than they'd like. But again, internally, their own systems dictate that to them. And often that procurement person who we would think is the one to whose head we need to bang against the wall and try and explain it to, often we have discovered it's not them. It's actually dictated higher up by people who definitely don't know what they need on the ground. Yeah. There's a good question, and I don't know, can you help? I'm putting you on the spot here, Paul. I don't know, do you have something like this? But maybe we can try and find it. Nathan has asked, would you have a procurement template for music festivals you may have received, which you would recommend for buyers to put to the test? So I guess it's, have you seen a good one where it's worded right and it's asking for the right things? Does that exist?
Yeah, one that I won on. So what
there you go.
Okay. I won't give anything away, but what I'll do, I'll put something together.
Yeah.
Take all the bits and pieces and everything else, and then I'm happy for you to share my email or whatever, and I'll Dropbox it to anybody. It'll be an RFP side of it, and it'll be this, that, and the other. All sensitive data will be taken out, the client's details, but it will give you an idea in terms of a security, crowd safety driven tender, the questions that you as a buyer of procurement should be asking, looking for. So it's okay. Maximum 1,500 words. Explain how you're going to mobilize. Come on.
Yeah, drives me mad, that stuff. If you're putting, Yeah, if you're putting maximum word counts on things, you're literally only trying to make your tick box exercise in the office easier. You're not actually interested in the best solution. That's really good. If you could put that together, I mean, there are follow-up emails for everyone who attends these. There's an automated system we're using, so we can add in a link to one of them when you have that ready, and just let everyone know that this exists if you're interested. We've also, I'm just looking. Sorry, Raymond has come back again, just saying, just a thought, comparing a procurement document with an event insurance policy may prove useful in educating a procurement person. So if you could imagine, if you actually got to sit in front of them and go, okay, here's your document and here's the actual wording from your insurance. Now, do you see where you might be running into trouble? I firmly believe most normal, decent people, when faced, if you can get them to look at the stuff, you see the lights go on. Most people, they're busy, they're doing it the same way they've always done it. Yeah, it's not that there's any badness in anyone, it's just not the way it happens, I guess.
I think it's important as well. I think for security and crowd safety providers, it's also, like you said, to assist the buyer, and I will do it. And I know Steve's on here, who works with me, my business development manager. We would say to the buyer, look, hold up a minute. You've put this in the tender, but it doesn't really warrant what you're asking for. So we'll either get, well, that's a standard, that's it, or they'll go, okay, we're going to hold the tender, and they'll put the announcement up. They'll re-look at it. And it's happened on 2 contracts that we've bidded for, to say, you best be looking, and again, it was insurance and stuff. Have a look at this criteria, what a security company's insurance will be asking of them. You need to change that. And it was changed and resubmitted back out again. So yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, and as a business owner, and I know a lot of the people on here, looking at international colleagues, are business owners and stuff. Like that can be one of the most frustrating things about tenders on the security or the crowd safety side is, they're asking for stuff because I don't know where they got that wording from. They cut and paste it from somewhere, but for what the service they actually want, they don't need that criteria in there, and quite often it's tying their hands. And you can say, we've had it on the safety side of things where there was a criteria that used to appear quite regularly a few years ago. And you would go, look, I'd imagine it's in there because you've used someone else's template. So maybe you don't know what it means to have that there. But essentially, by you having that in there, here's what you're cutting out, or here's what you make. Here's what you render not an option, or here are the types of suppliers you won't get responding because they can't tick that box. And again, it is an education piece. And sometimes, especially we find for local authority or for state tenders, again, the wheels of change, they take quite a while. So you're on a hiding to nothing there. But often with clients where you can have straight up conversations or pick up the phone and you go, look, you might want to look at that again. We've done it with security ones, which aren't ones we'd be bidding for at all. But we'd look at them and we'd be interested, or it could be a gig we're already engaged on, and we're reviewing their security tender. And we've often had to ring up and go, look, if I were you, I'd review that, because here are the companies, straight up, here are the companies you're going to get. Here's what they're going to be paying staff, and here's where you're going to land in the market. If you want reliable, proper security services, you need to change. We suggest you change X, Y, and Z. And it's obviously in our best interest, because as you said earlier on, if we're the safety people, suddenly we're getting a phone call after a tender process is finished and we're told, right, you're now working with these nice people. And you go, we've dealt with them before, we'd rather not, or they don't suit this event. And it can be quite, for us then, there's reputational risk, there's event risk, there's everything, because now we're working with operators that, for whatever reason, maybe we know don't suit that gig, or just we don't rate, or we haven't had good experiences with before. And it can be quite tricky when you have one event that's based on 6 different tenders for suppliers. You end up with a team potentially that maybe they've never worked together before. Maybe they have and didn't get on. Like there's all those interoperability things that will come into play.
I know then, Mark, that you've got a good buyer there, because if the good buyer, even at that stage, takes on board a security provider or a crowd safety provider's recommendation and changes that tender, that's the sort of people I want to work with. Not, well, that's the caveat, that's what you've got to do, because you know then what the ethos is going to be running through the event. I've seen tenders like that for a one-day gig for £5,000 project. It's like that, 4 different stages, this, that, and the other, and they wonder why. Well, people just chuck in so much rubbish to bulk that tender out and put it through, and it's an educational process, and it has to change. It really does have to change.
No, I think you're right. I think, and just looking at the chat, I think there's a lot of people agreeing with the general thread of what we're saying. I think we've caught all the questions in the chat there. If you at some point can get that document together, I know it'd be very useful. It's not the type of thing people can get their hands on very easily. And again, with the sensitive stuff stripped out, I think you'll get a lot of thanks from people if that appears in an email link for them. That never happened. This was not recorded. There is no proof. Okay, I know we've had a few people had to head away already and are thanking us, which is good. For us, Paul, I want to say thanks to you. I think this was a great way to kick things off. We kept most of the people in the room stayed right till now. We've only dropped about 7 people, I think, which is really good and a great way for us to start. We're getting a lot of thanks in the chat there, which you can read. From an event insights and safe events perspective, in the offer tab, we've popped up just a link to make it easy for you if you want to look at the other sessions. If you want to see what's out there on the rest of the program and register for any of them. I know a lot of the names I'm seeing here are registered on a lot of these already. I think just before we checked in to this, we had over 3,236 registrations, which again, we're floored by. So hopefully this has gone well. Hopefully the tech has worked for everyone. You enjoyed it. Honestly, any feedback, our email addresses are easy to find. mark@safeevents.ie is mine. Send anything through. We appreciate it all. We've got at least 22 of these to do. So if we learn from this one, we learn from the next one. By the time we hit number 22, maybe it's really, really slick. So look, unless anyone's jumping in with a question there, which I don't think they are, everyone's heading off. Paul, thank you from us. Everyone, thank you for joining us again. I'll be cheeky and say if you enjoyed it, if you found it useful, get on social media, spread the word. Like I said, we've invested, thanks to Actavo, in the tech to allow us to have a lot of people in these rooms. So we shouldn't reach a point where we're kicking anyone out, hopefully. So, or not letting them in, more to the point. I definitely don't want to be kicking people out. So look, thank you very much. We'll leave it there. Like I said, get in touch if you need anything. Paul, have a great day and I'll talk to you later. And we hope everyone enjoyed the session. Cheers, folks.
Bye now.